Okay, so very, very important video talking about the requirements for your final project because everything we do in the next 6 weeks is going to be leading up to that final project. So if you go in your Canvas course under modules all the way down to the bottom, you get your instructions for the final project here. You also get your instructions for the rough draft, and I have some examples for you of previous students' projects. So things you can look at, kind of get a good scope of what it is I'm expecting from you. So final project directions. Your final project is going to be an annotated bibliography. So you are going to have to find me 10 specific resource types based on your topic. You then have to give me an annotation that includes at least a 100-word summary, a 25 to 100 word method section explaining how you found this resource, and then a minimum of a 100-word evaluation explaining why this resource is credible and appropriate or why it's not credible and appropriate, and using the 5 elements of the CRAP test. So we're kind of combining project 1 with citations, project 2 with evaluation, mixing it in with actually finding these resources and being able to summarize them. So with your 10 different resources, this is one of the most important parts because I do have very specific source requirements. So out of your 10 resources, you have to have at least one reference resource. So something like an encyclopedia, dictionary, almanac, handbook. We're going to learn how to find those within library resources. You have to have 2 books. Ebooks are absolutely always acceptable. Definitely acceptable now that we are online only. And these have to be books that are owned by the library, so they have to be able to be found in Primo. You have to have 3 journal articles. Out of those 3 articles, 2 have to be peer-reviewed. The third can be a peer-reviewed journal article, but it can also be something from a popular magazine or trade journal as well. You have to have at least 1 newspaper article, and it has to be a newspaper UNCP subscribes to either in paper or something we subscribe through some of the news databases I'm going to show you. So it can't just be a random website. It needs to be something you're finding through library resources. The rest of the semester is really going to be focused on actually using specific library tools from the Livermore Library. So all of your resources are going to be coming from there, with the exception of a government document. So we're going to have a week on finding GovDocs. And so you have to have me one government document or appropriate government website. And we'll talk about the difference between those two, but that's something we're going to cover towards the end. That brings you up to 8 resources. You have to have 10. Your final 2 can be any of the above. So you can bring me another book, you can bring me another article, you can bring me another GovDoc. I don't really care for those 2, but you do have to have a grand total of 10. So this is one of the most important parts of this annotated bibliography requirements. This is where students, if they don't meet these source requirements, lose lots of points. If you don't have one of these sources, you automatically lose 30 points. If you're bringing me 10 sources, but you don't have 2 books, you only have 1 book, that loses you 15. So I kind of really do deduct quite harshly based upon whether or not you can find those 10 sources. So your bibliography, if you continue down with the instruction, is going to be organized alphabetically by author last name or by title, depending on whatever comes first in the citation. You do not need to number them. Please do not number them. You do not need to tell me which is a book, which is a journal article, etc. I can read that. I know how to tell what a citation is. You don't need to organize them in any other way. Organize them alphabetically. Very important. Then finally, you kind of have an example of how I'm wanting you to set up your citation and your annotation. So I do want a 150 to 100 word description of your topic in writing. So what is it you're questioning? What is it you're wanting to research? What are you wanting to explore, explain in your hypothetical paper? So with this topic, you're pretending you have to write a 20-page research paper. So pick something you can go in depth on. And what you're doing instead of writing the research paper is you are going to give me the annotated bibliography and do all the research for the paper, but not actually write it. So hooray for that. So with that, so you give me your topic description once at the beginning of your bibliography. You then go into your citation, give me a full correct citation for whatever resource type you're using. I then want that 100-word summary. So going back to our rules and our lessons on summarizing resources. What is this item? What information does it contain? What are the main points made by the author? Conclusion of the resource. So give me that in a very solid minimum of 100-word paragraph. Your method section goes over where did you find this? What search terms did you use? What databases did you search in? Which limiters did you use? So in sentence form, how did you get to this resource? And then a minimum of 100-word evaluation. So just like you did with Project 2, make sure you go through all 5 elements of the CRAP test to tell me how this is credible and appropriate for a college level paper. In reality, everything's probably going to have a little bit of an issue or a concern. And so if it does have a concern, like it's dated, once again, I want you to address that it's out of date and why you would consider still using this. Or if you're saying that I found this resource, but because it's out of date, I might be hesitant to use it or might not want to use it. So explain that in that 100 words. Basic directions here on page 1. Page 2 is your checklist. So I added this about a year ago to make sure that students are hitting every part of this assignment because it is multifaceted. You got a lot of little details you have to include. So go through this checklist before you turn in your final project. Does it have your name on it? Does it use correct APA style? Do you have all your source requirements? Does each of your sources have that summary, methods, and evaluation section? Have you proofread it? Sort of things like that. And then finally on page 3, I kind of give you a example of what this would look like for this specific source there. So kind of giving you just a one source example. So it's 3 pages of directions, but page 2 and 3 are really kind of things to help you explain what it is I'm expecting. So lots of details on that. Do read through those directions. Let me know if you have questions. Like I said, everything from this point on is going to be leading up into fulfilling the requirements for that final project. Your final project is worth 300 points. Right now, it is due May 6th by midnight. May 6th is the Wednesday of finals week. We do not have a final exam or anything like that. We were never going to have a class meeting finals week. You just have to turn it in on Canvas by midnight. Your rough draft of your final project, if you look at the directions, is due by April 22nd. That's also going to be due by midnight. So it is very, very important you turn in this rough draft on time. Reason is so important. I need time to give you feedback to make sure you're on the right track. If you're not on the right track, you probably need to make corrections and things like that and revise to get on the right track before you turn in that major final project. Your rough draft is worth 100 points. For your rough draft, you are to find 3 out of your 10 sources. I don't care what 3 sources they are, as long as they meet the requirements of the 10. And you are to submit that citation for those 3 sources with their complete annotation. So I need a citation, summary, methods, and evaluation for each of your 3 sources. So you don't have to give me a rough draft of the entire bibliography. I just want you to give me a chunk of what it is you're looking at doing so that you can see that we're on the right track. And so if I need to give you any feedback or corrections, I have time to do that. Lots of students get overwhelmed a little bit. They give me this look of panic when they read those final project directions and realize that each citation has to have a minimum of a 225-word annotation. When you put that over 10 sources, that's over 2,000 words, which is most of these final projects come out to any 8 to 10 pages long, depending on how people space things out and stuff like that within their formatting. When you actually get into it, though, most students realize, okay, this isn't as big of a deal as I thought it was because it's not 10 pages of a research paper where you have to tie each thing together and make an argument over 10 pages. It's 1 page on this one source. So it's 225 words about this one topic. And so really 100 words of a summary, 100 words of that evaluation, 25 words of where did I find this and how did I find this. So much easier when you start breaking it down into those 10 segments. So as we get into learning how to find your library resources, we're going to start on that on Friday. I really strongly encourage you to go ahead and start finding the sources you need for your final project and start working on your annotations. This is much easier to work on and to undertake when you break it down into the parts. So say, okay, we learned about finding books today. I'm going to go find my 2 books. And by class time next period, I'm going to have started on my annotations. When you start breaking it down into workable chunks, it's a much easier project. And then you just have to kind of tie it together and get polished for the final project that you need to turn in. I do, as I said, have examples from previous students. These are anonymous examples, but these were students who weren't perfect in their final projects, but they did a really good job and did a really good job showing you what I mean by summary, methods, and evaluation. So it gives you an example of this is kind of the standard I want y'all to try to meet at a bare minimum for what I'm expecting with this final project. If you have questions now about what the requirements are, definitely reach out. If you have questions as you're going through it and you're wondering, okay, does this meet qualifications? Is this what I'm looking for? Do not hesitate to shoot me an email or give my office a call. I will be more than happy to work with you on these final projects. It's not as hard as it looks, I promise. So thank you for that.